Welcome to the Mitten Mysteries podcast, hosted by Haley V.
Hello friends, and welcome back to the podcast. If you are new here, my name is Haley V, and I like to talk about Michigan's history, mystery, and all things strange and unusual. If you guys do enjoy today's podcast, make sure you guys go ahead and give it a rating on all of our podcast platforms. And also, if you're interested, share this with a friend. I know that I love sharing this podcast with a bunch of people that are into the same things that I am. So if you know of anybody that loves about Michigan history or spooky things, creepy, weird, unusual stuff, then go ahead and send this to them, and we can all talk about the creepy, strange and unusual things together. Also, if you're interested, you guys can follow me over on my socials. My name is Haley V on all platforms, but you can also follow the Mitten Mysteries podcast on all platforms as well. We have TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We don't have Twitter, don't really use Twitter, but all the other podcast platforms and all social medias are available if you guys want to check out more content from me. But enough rambling, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. So today we are talking all about the Stafford Perry Hotel in Petoskey, Michigan. If you guys are familiar with the podcast, then you guys would know that Petoskey, Michigan is where me and my husband had gotten engaged. So Petoskey is a very sentimental city for me and my family and my husband and I. It's a beautiful place. We've gone every single season, winter, spring, summer, fall. It's gorgeous in every single season. There's a bunch of shops and dining and really cute stores and boutiques. It's a really great place to go out and see the sights and kind of shop around and eat. But it's also known for a lot of history, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but I'm sure a lot of you from Michigan are if you're listening. If you've ever heard the term Petoskey stone, that is where you can find a lot of these. Petoskey stones are from an ancient coral that was in the Great Lakes, and it's only available in the Great Lakes area, and you can find these stones all over the place in Petoskey in the water. Petoskey is a very great area for families and couples and vacationing, dining, shopping. So obviously with a lot of tourism comes a lot of hotels, and one of the favorite hotels that we have stayed at has been the Stafford Perry Hotel. And I know that the Stafford Perry has a ton of history with it, especially with it being one of like the very first hotels on the Gold Coast of Michigan. And as we all know, of course, with the history that comes with these places, there tends to be a lot of activity from the paranormal side of things. Now, my husband and I went there and stayed, I believe, in February of like 2017. And when we had went there, it was the winter time, so obviously it was really cold. But the Stafford Perry Hotel is open all year long, so it's open during the summer, winter, spring, fall, all seasons. So when we had first went there, we booked it on a whim, kind of, and I feel like that kind of happens with me and my husband all the time when we end up going on trips in general. So we ended up getting a hotel room at the Stafford Perry Hotel, and we didn't really know any of the history about it. We didn't know pretty much anything about it, but we just seen it on the Google page, and we clicked on it and booked a room right away because we thought it was super cute and it was on the water. My husband and I, we get there pretty late. I think we got there around like 10 or 11 at night, so we couldn't really go explore anything, but we did go ahead and we got our room and we went and checked out the room, and it was really pretty antique Victorian style hotel. It was very beautiful. If you guys have listened to the podcast before, you would know that I love all things Victorian and Edwardian. Anything from the early 1900s, I am very in love with. So this hotel was beautiful. It had a lot of the floral in the room, you know, like if you think of like your grandma's house, it was kind of like that, like just like very floral, very feminine, very delicate, very beautiful. We loved all of the decor in there. The wallpaper was really beautiful. It was a very olden Victorian Edwardian style. And I believe after we got there, we got to the hotel room and we just kind of went to see our room, and then we actually left and we went to go get food at one of the bars down in downtown Petoskey. So we pretty much just stayed there just to sleep, and then we woke up in the morning and we had gotten breakfast up at the dining area that they have upstairs. To be quite honest, I don't really remember everything about the breakfast. I do believe it was really good, and they had like the cute little mini jams that are like in the little mini jars, super tiny. I thought that those were really cute. And I remember overlooking, like from the windows, they had a beautiful view of the lake. For those of you that are listening that do not know, Petoskey is on like a really high elevation, and so when you're in like the top of the town, you can look down and it's just a giant hill, and you can overlook everything. You can see the big beautiful water, you can see all the town, the downtown area. It's just a beautiful place, especially in the fall time. If you guys get a chance to go up north to Petoskey, go in the fall. It is gorgeous. We really did enjoy our stay when we did go to the Stafford Perry, but I don't remember anything weird really happening at that time. Really, I wasn't really looking for anything. We just kind of really went there to just sleep pretty much. But I do remember it being a very beautiful hotel. The Stafford Perry Hotel is located at 100 Lewis Street in Petoskey, Michigan, and the crossroads are Lewis Street and Bay Street. The Stafford Perry Hotel was built in 1899 by a guy named Dr. Norman J. Perry, and he had built this hotel after giving up his dental practice because when he was doing dental work on a patient, the patient had died following a multiple tooth extraction. So after he did that, he was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to switch professions. And he decided to build this hotel, and he operated the Perry Hotel up until 1919. And then two brothers named Dr. John and George Raycraft had purchased the building, and then they wanted to turn the hotel into a hospital. Because of Petoskey City Fathers, they felt that there was really a need for more hotels in the area because of all the tourists. So they decided to build the hospital somewhere else instead of building the hospital within the Perry Hotel. So the brothers at that time had selected their nephew, D. Herbert Raycraft, as the hotel manager. And once the hotel was kind of in his possession, he turned it into a very lively center of attraction, featuring a lot of small orchestras during dinner and dances at least once a week. So it was very popular at the time. Because of this popularity, it demanded like a lot of expansion within the hotel. So the Raycrafts doubled the capacity of the hotel to be able to hold 300 guests when they added a fourth story. So they added an extra 46 room wing in 1926. And then after all that said and done, Herbert Raycraft and his wife Hazel, they both retired in 1961. So then they sold the hotel to a man named John Davis. And at the time, the Davis had made a lot of improvements that were needed for the hotel, including the panoramic window, which overlooks the Little Traverse Bay from the dining room. And this is the dining room area that we had sat in when we had our breakfast at the hotel. So when John Davis had the hotel, he changed the name to Perry Davis Hotel and then operated the hotel until Alan Gornick purchased it in the 1970s. And then in 1989, the Stafford's Hospitality had purchased the Perry, and they did a bunch of work on the inside and exterior to restore it back to like its original historic landmark. And today it is now listed on the National Register of Historic Sites as well as the state of Michigan counterpart as well. And so out of the 21 hotels that were operating in the early 1900s in Petoskey, only the Perry Hotel is the only one that's left in operation today. And an interesting fact that I really didn't know about even living here in Michigan my entire life is that Ernest Hemingway spent part of his first 22 years in northern Michigan. Hemingway spent the winter of 1919 and 1920 in northern Michigan around Petoskey area, and he also stayed at the Perry Hotel as well, and then he would go and play billiards at what is now the City Park Grill. And then he also spent hours writing at the Bayview Association. And then he also had a summer cottage which was in Windmere on Walloon Lake. Each fall, the Michigan Hemingway Society hosts a conference in Petoskey where the conference goers retrace Hemingway's footsteps and they discuss his impact on the literary world. So when we stayed at the Terrace Inn Hotel, I believe that is when they had Michigan Hemingway Society there while we were there. So that conference was that weekend, and a bunch of people came and they got to retrace Hemingway's footsteps, and they discussed everything about his life and his literary world and the way that Ernest Hemingway put a mark on the world, including Petoskey, and he's really embraced in Petoskey, Michigan. So if you're a fan of Ernest Hemingway and his writings, then definitely go to Petoskey up in northern Michigan because they love him there. When you're going to the Stafford's Perry Hotel now in today's age, you will find there's an elegant dining room, there's a casual pub with live entertainment, and as well as an outside terrace dining that's all on site. There's AC in each guest room, and some have private balconies. And just outside of the hotel, you can walk to a lot of the shops, waterfront parks, fitness trails, and downtown events that are held at Petoskey. There's also event space that you were able to rent to be able to have a wedding, parties, banquets, any type of celebration that you can think of can be held at the Perry Hotel. Now, while doing my research, I was very curious to see if Ernest Hemingway haunts the Perry Hotel. And during my research, I didn't really see anything about him, but I did come across a lot of creepy paranormal experiences that many people have and continue to have at the Perry Hotel. One of the most reoccurring things that tends to happen at the Perry Hotel is in the Noggin Room, and that's the bar that's located inside the basement of the Perry Hotel. Now, there's been many reports of glasses breaking on their own, forks flying through the air, people being squeezed by the small hands of a child seemingly playing beneath the table. Apparently, if you go into this bar down in the basement of the Perry Hotel, you get your hands grabbed by children, forks are flying through the air, and glasses are just shattering on their own. A story that came from the news review on this from a guy named Christopher Strubble. Strubble is a local historian and owner of the Petoskey Yesterday, which represents tours that tell all about the past of Petoskey, including his well-known ghost walks that he has. Apparently, he is a historical skeptic. So Strubble had shared this story on News Review. So this is how Strubble tells the story. So 3 people were working that night in the Noggin Room down in the basement, and they had just locked it down, getting it ready for the closing shift at the end of the night. So they used to clean some of the beer tap spouts and club soda. So when these people were leaving, they had heard a noise, and so they turned back around, they turned on the lights, and they're completely shocked to see the pitcher of water that was full with the taps in the bottom of the pitcher is now half empty, and there is a book that is shoved in there with such force that it split in half. And no one else at the time was inside of the bar, and only the workers were there. The workers had also noticed something very odd about the scene, and there was no other displacements around that area. So whatever entity had shoved this book into the pitcher that was full, but the water had seemed to go nowhere. So when this book was pushed in there, usually if you shove a book inside of a very full pitcher, water would splash everywhere. But apparently with this time, the book was inside there, was half full once it was shoved in there, but the water had gone nowhere. There was no water all over the ground or anything. And the book that was shoved inside of this pitcher was called You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. And that was the name of the book that was shoved in the pitcher. So now this isn't the only time that this book has appeared inside of this hotel, just randomly in places. So it all starts in the library room on the 3rd floor of this hotel. And this is a very famous paranormal spot within the hotel. The library is said to house the spirit of Doris, who is an older woman who reads by the window. Doris is the one that is well known. Doris is one of the most well-known ghosts that is said to inhabit the Perry Hotel. So Strubble tells the story where there was a guest that was staying at the hotel, and they were up in the library walking around the table where Doris had been seen and almost trips on a lump in the carpet. So she peels back the rug and it is completely soaking wet, and there is the book lying there, but the book was completely dry, which is very weird because the rug was soaking wet. So the book was placed back on the shelf, and the employee had joked around saying, "Doris, if this is your book, then come and get it." And guess what? The next day, the book was gone. And a few months later, that same book was the one that ended up shoved in the pitcher. Strubble had mentioned that a follower of the area hauntings heard one story for the first time recently, and he said that 2 separate accounts from 2 different people tell of a man in a blue suit. Strubble goes on to say that a woman told me, who worked at the Perry before, she was sitting downstairs near Dr. Perry's office. She looked over and saw a man in a blue suit. She said he was walking right towards me and was completely solid. Then I looked down and he was gone from the knees down, she said. But then again, the train station was also built in 1899 and it was located just across the street. And at one point in time, the station was the regional connector linking northern Michigan to the cities of lower Michigan and Illinois. So as you can imagine, there was 13,000 trains running through there at one point, so there's a lot of people coming in and out. So you can only imagine that there's a lot of ghosts running in and out too. And there was one story, unfortunately, about a man that was walking across the tracks and he had gotten hit by a train and his legs were completely chopped off. He was alive for about 4 to 5 minutes before he completely bled out and passed away. So that was a very traumatic death, and I'm sure that could be possibly maybe the guy in the blue suit. And then another time, Strubble had been talking with one of the workers that were working at the hotel, and the worker asked him if he could explain some of his paranormal experiences with him. And so he was telling about this one year when they were doing a lot of renovations to the hotel. He kept seeing a man in a blue suit walking around the hotel, but he had no idea who it was. And this man that was working on the hotel, he's worked there for 12 years earlier, and so he has never seen this man in a blue suit before, so it was very shocking to him. In the past couple years, there's also been a little girl with golden curls that's been seen at the Perry Hotel. And one of the first stories that they have heard about this little girl is that there was a big mirror in the main lobby when you walk in, and they have this weird phenomenon that happens when they go to clean the mirror, and then all of a sudden they'll see handprints 13 feet off the ground. So if you think about a normal person's height, the average height's about 5'9", 6 foot, somewhere in between there. So 13 feet off the ground, they would have to be like holding their kid really high to be able to touch that mirror. So there's always handprints after they clean it. There's been a lot of pictures taken where there has been this little girl in the photographs as well. A woman that used to work at the Perry Hotel had told Strubble that one night she took a picture of the Christmas tree in the lobby, and when she got home she noticed that there was the little girl standing right next to the Christmas tree, but she wasn't there when she took the picture. There's also been some sightings of the little girl in the library as well. So Strubble also tells of a story about his friends that were driving around the hotel, and they had seen this little girl peering out the window. So it was around 2 a.m. and so they said that they had thought that somebody had gotten out of their room. So they called the front desk, which was outside by Dr. Perry's office, and said that the little girl was up in the library and they should try to figure out which child had escaped their parents' room just in case for safety reasons. So the guy that was working said, "I'm looking at the camera right now and there is no one up there." And so Strubble's friend Ian goes, "Well, she's waving at me right now." And there's also apparently a story about a woman that had committed suicide and died there, and she is said to haunt the garden area that overlooks the lake. There's been no historical records of any woman committing suicide there at the Stafford Perry, so I can't be sure if that is true. It's probably just a legend or a story, but there's been reportings of this woman being seen and captured on a camera photo that was taken of the garden area, so who really knows? It could just be a little legend, but it could also be true, but it wasn't recorded, so we don't know for sure. I would love to travel to the Perry Hotel to go ahead and visit it again. I loved staying there before, and I think now going in with this knowledge of this hotel, I think it would be very interesting to see if I do pick up on anything and not just go there to basically sleep, but I want to explore and go to the library because I didn't get to go to the library last time we were there, and I would just like to check it out and kind of ask some questions from the managers and stuff and just the hotel staff to see how they feel about the hotel. But let me know your guys' thoughts. Do you guys believe that the Stafford Perry Hotel is indeed haunted as well? And have you guys ever stayed here before? As always, you guys can email themittenmysteries@gmail.com with your stories or your experiences from any of the places we talk about here on the podcast, as well as following me over on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at Haley V, or you can also follow me at The Mitten Mysteries as well. I have all of the platforms. But if you did enjoy today's podcast, make sure you guys go ahead and share it with a friend and let me know what topic you guys would like to hear from me next. As always, I hope you guys have a great weekend and happy 4th of July, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Stay spooky, y'all.